Who's calling? Shigeru Miyamoto? What? A new F-Zero next year? Yeah, sounds like a good idea. Don't worry, the phone hasn't been on for a long time. It is one of those cases where Metroid Prime Hunters turning 20 this year has got me kind of looking around for Prime Hunter stuff that I have. Nice double-decade memorabilia. That double whammy combo so effective that I said it twice. TF2 turns 20 next year, but I definitely have been so excited about Prime Hunters and Battlefront 2 last year. Character shooters before character shooters were even a subgenre. But I remember I got this phone, this is from my brother, and I used it as my smartphone in early 2010s. I ended up getting, it's crazy. I didn't even, one thing, so this was the time where obviously I did think phones were going to improve in technology overall, kind of like DVD to Blu-ray. So obviously this, like, the way this phone is, I was like, oh, it's like an early day laptop, and to the point, smartphones have become basically laptops. You buy the keyboards again. I think Blackberries were ahead of their time. But yeah, there really was this kind of charm to early smartphones about you could buy custom like peel images. And I'm gonna credit this Mega Man art in the description. But I was able to get this as a custom phone print. But it reminds me about how there really was that kind of fun era in the late 2000s, early 2010s of, cell phone technology still being more relatively new. And so there was a blend of the kind of old 90s bright colors, crazy fun stuff you can get, like the trinkets for your phone, or dial this number for this ringtone, da 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 da, and who knows if they're talking to the Nintendo lawyers, hopefully. And I'm not saying that's lost now, but definitely thinking about my phone and a lot of phones, because the technology has improved a lot and they're a lot more delicate, the priority tends to be a lot more on safety measures. You don't have to, but, otter boxes and basically protecting your portable laptops. And that's, it's nice to live in a world where we can have a laptop on our fingertips, being able to look up things like videos and just research to help answer a question is nice. Having a phone with you in a practice room is a double-edged sword. And, I went to the University of Central Missouri and MU for music. I got a bachelor's degree in audio engineering. And, part of the music school program for UCM is you have to have some type of instrument while you're there. So that includes private lessons and practicing and doing a barrier exam, which I've talked about before. Definitely one of the most high-stakes tests I ever took, because if you failed it 3 times, you were kicked out of the school. Obviously, in a professional way, they're not going to say you're kicked out. But that's what would happen. If you failed the barrier exam 3 times, you could not be back into UCM School of Music. And that's not just a UCM thing. Barrier juries, barrier exams are pretty big across the United States. And so that whole notion of practicing, it's so... I talked recently about growing up knowing people that would freak out if they got a B on a test. If they got a B+ on a paper, right? That B+ and below range. Some of them A- and below range. And it was a lot of added stress for them. That type of lifestyle, I think they oftentimes were... Honestly, it's a trade-off, right? I can't flat out say, oh, they were cheating themselves out of a happier life there. Obviously, school tends to be, school's challenging, no matter what you're majoring in college, specifically for college. But really, no matter whatever major you're doing, if it requires general education, that alone is going to require a lot of discipline. And so those students that, would freak out over an A- or below, I do think that was an added layer of, it became like high levels of stress to a lot of them, panic. And so you know, that alone is already, you know, a constant path of high maintenance, right? Or making sure that everything is maintained and well oiled in the machine, which is just school on top of making sure that you have A- or higher. And that could also just be from their personal expectations. All that being said, you add music on top of that, and it's almost it's like 1.5 times in terms of study time. And that's kind of how music school goes, is you need to find time to study for your classes, but you're gonna have to find time to practice your instrument. And it was kind of a fun discipline to hone. Now, thankfully, I had Dr. Wendler help me out with piano in community college. Now, community college, you know, I didn't have any those were my private lessons, was piano, and she helped me a lot. Not just in being prepared for the 4 courses of piano I would take at the university, but she, you know, it was good to get into the rhyme and rhythm of things for playing piano. She actually started helping me out my senior year of high school because my mom reached out to her, and it was awesome. A definition of an amazing person, both her and her husband. And if you're in Kansas City looking for good music lessons, this is not some, you know, again, paid advertisement. I can vouch they are some of the best teachers I've known. And so being able to get into the discipline of practicing instruments again was really important as I got into university. And I think that's a big thing, is I'll never forget the Melee player quote. And I found out he played piano during community college, and I was like, whoa, nice, man. And I just remember talking about, you know, practicing instruments, blah, blah, and he, blah, blah, blah. But the blah, blah, blah was, again, the intricacies of improvement. And which is funny, because, you know, Melee is a fighting game. And so while we're at this event where we're hanging out playing games and, you know, you're striving to improve in a fighting game, instruments are its own avenue for improvement. I'll never forget he joked but didn't joke that you could always practice more. And it really is that kind of almost, it's almost an endless chase. Obviously, there's only so much time each day. And, you know, it comes down to your personal ambition. But I do love that joke, but not joke that he said. He more so joked at probably what other teachers have said to him. You could always practice more, right? There's always times that you could be practicing more, right? And, you know, this starts to stem into when you're at a job and they talk about work-life balance. Some of them actually care about that. Some of them just have to legally say that to say, oh yeah, we're taking care of the mental well-beings of our employees. And so when it comes to practicing, and you're at, you know, a university and you got to study for your tests, for your classes, and also making sure you're playing your notes on your saxophone correctly, it's interesting to reflect on that and be like, well, what is my goal here? It's this current song. Can I perform this well? I have a recital coming up. Can I play for the recital well? But also, I think an important part about music lessons, and this stems into practice smarter, not harder. That being said, time investment is going to make a natural correlation towards our improvement. It's just the way our brain works. You know, when we talk about spatial memory, when we talk about, you know, different forms of how our brain recites things, you know, a recital, you know, spatial memory in terms of, oh, I remember this route to get here, right? You know, there's so many different patterns that our brain picks up on, and you know, one part of intelligence is mapping out, you know, muscle memory, tracing muscle memory, but then also how can we in tangent work with that, you know, degree of psychology that's going on there. And so what I mean by that is, I'm assigned to play the overworld theme from Yoshi's Island, da, 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 you know, on the piano. So the default approach is, here are the notes, learn the notes, play it on the sheet. I think the practice smarter aspect is, what's the intention of the composer here? Oh, Koji Kondo wants me to hold out that high note, you know, da 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 da. You know, if I well, the high note and going to the low. So da 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 da. So if I hold up the high note and then the low note, it makes a strong musical impact as intended. Those things are often covered by the teachers, the instructors, and then by them giving you that knowledge and you take that into the practice room. That's going to help you practice smarter, not harder. Because without that knowledge, you might just be repeating the notes over and over, and you might be repeating in a way that might not be as it's musically intended. That being said, in the world of freeform jazz and improv, you can create your own spin on it. It's the difference between an assignment and playing music from your perspective or what you want out of it musically. And so that constant chase of, I could always be practicing more. I think for your own sanity, it is important to set disciplined amount of time. And, when it comes to college, it definitely came to, okay, my big things are the exam to study for. My big things in music were often seen as, what song do I have to do for my jury? Or what song do I have to do for my current lesson? And I do think by practicing smarter, those 8 degrees of intelligence they cover in Intro to Psychology, I think are important, because if we're able to tap into how our brains naturally work, what is skill, right? What is being able to recall upon muscle memory that we build? How through our repetition can we improve in terms of speed and efficiency? But now, if we're actively thinking while we practice, we are thinking about the composer's intent, we think about what in our performance skills can we add to it, with obviously not getting in trouble, I think that can go a long way. It definitely, by practicing smarter, that also is the avenue of collecting knowledge. And the whole practicing smarter thing is we can use our resources around us. How other people have played the song. Again, having a phone in our practice room, while it can't be easily distracting, it also can be a great tool. I can't tell you how many times I used my phone for a metronome application alone. That was important. You can use your phone as a tuner with microphones. You can use your phone to look up the performance of a song you're practicing for and gain a new perspective on how at least they would play it. Maybe you're going to play a little bit differently. Maybe you were inspired to hold out that high note on the Yoshi's Island song even farther. It depends. And the cool part about performances is, while I, at first would, I definitely would overthink performances at first. Going into them, I'd be like, oh, what if I... Again, this goes back to how your brain works, but I'd be like, oh, what if I held this note a little bit shorter? Okay, I got to make sure I hold on to it in just the amount of range where it's what the composer wanted. But really, what a lot of my instructors told me is, they basically told me that, you practice enough to get to a threshold of competency, and then with that competency, you apply to what you're learning around you and what you like out of the song, and make for a good performance. Oftentimes, if you mess up a note in a recital, a lot of people, and this is what my teachers told me, and I think it's true in general, if you mess up a note or two, or you mess up holding out a note as long, most people won't notice unless it's dramatically multiple notes in a different key. It'd be like, da 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 da, yeah. Good old Mario 3 theme remix coming soon. But if you're able to maintain a good composure, you actually can spin that to your advantage, right? Da 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 da. It really is presentation. How can you show to the audience what you're playing? And to some people, if you're competent enough in it, they're going to be like, oh, that's his own spin on it, rather than you dramatically going, ugh, yeah. Thankfully, I never really saw a recital with someone doing that. It would be funny, but I know that a lot of students want to make sure they do well. But really, that, you could always be practicing more. And so that question really comes down to, what do you want out of your practice? What's your goal here? And I do think a lot of teachers, we definitely approach school with get good grades. But what are we getting out of it? What are we getting out of an education? And I think the important part of education is being able to help develop and hone critical thinking skills. And so it's not just, oh, I have to play the overworld theme by Yoshi's Island, which in my opinion, which would be awesome. It's what was the perspective behind Koji Kondo when he made this song? What could I, as a saxophone and or piano player, bring to this piece? What could I add to it? What could be something that could be fun? How much leeway does my teacher allow me to do that, right? And you ask these questions and how you can approach things. Then you're asking, why would the teacher give me this? Or why does the teacher let me pick this song? Why did the teacher approve of that? The way we think like that is important. It's important to ponder why these things are being approached. Not in a way of rebellion, like in the way in grade school where, you know, you'd have a student every now and then say, when would I ever use algebra in life? Which is, you know, obviously pretty ignorant because we use algebra all the time. Whenever someone says, I'll wing it, I only need a little bit, you know what, put $5 on pump 6 for gas. You know, you're applying for X there. If you didn't do the full measurements of gas needed, you're doing, you know, you're trying to problem solve there, right? X in algebra is a missing number, a missing factor. And so being able to apply, you know, logic, being able to see the approach of how other people do a certain method, that can help you solve for X. And in practice's case, you know, when you're practicing, what is the X amount of time that is helpful for you? What can help you in understanding that this is a good amount of time, you're not overdoing it or you're underdoing it. You could always be practicing more, but it is important that by practicing smarter, not harder, you can understand the big picture of a piece, you can understand the big picture of a performance, you can understand the artistic side to why we perform music. But it's not just in music. Whether you're programming, whether you're editing for a video, yeah, you could always be practicing more, but understand that through your observation of constant use, consistent use, being able to understand why you do what you do, why things do as they do, in a comparative way, but not in a comparative way where you go into grass is greener syndrome and you become miserable. Oh, they performed that Yoshi's Island song so much better. Oh, that person's video editing is so much better than mine. Understand what they're doing. Try to understand what their perspective is, what their approach was on it, but understand that we all press buttons differently. And I don't just mean that in fighting games. Whether it's a piano, a saxophone, or a keyboard, understand by just trying and having a broad perspective of why we do what we do, why something was made, and then applying yourself in a personal way into a professional manner with a form of discipline each day can help you build upon yourself and understand the world as a pretty cool place when we can share the great things that we put out into this world and understand that, oh, by, you know, me just, and I don't even mean by that of like, oh, I have to go share with people what I'm doing. No, it's, you know, by me performing this Yoshi's Island piece in a recital, that can inspire other people to say, hey, I like the way that guy, from small things, from posture to big things like technical execution. There's a lot of things that can inspire others when you are in the practice room saying, what can I bring personally and what can be added to this professionally to make something unique to you. And then you put that out there, again, whether it's a game or a recital. And it's amazing how much that snowball picks up, being able for other people to see, oh, I want to try that. And by them saying, I want to try that, that's a form of practice. And if they keep that drive to keep at it, rather than beating themselves up, say, oh, I need to practice more, I need to do this over and over. If they have that ambition to want to put something else out in the world, again, a performance, a video game, and it holds true to them, I think there's a lot that could be learned from that. Now, obviously, that can be a statement on so many different things that are, quote, put out in the world. But I think at its core, when it comes to art, when it comes to professionalism, I think there is a big key component for how we can apply ourselves to it, and then other people can understand the differences that we all have in pressing those buttons differently and saying, oh, you know what, there's a consistency here for playing this song, but I actually want to try out this trill here on this note. Oh, there's an approach to programming these enemies in an RPG. That's pretty cool. What if I combine that with my knowledge of poker and understanding that by shuffling up a deck a lot, there's a lot of variances added, and that psychologically, not knowing what attacks in this case for poker, cards my opponent has, can add a new dynamic to what they approach in a battle. So there's so much knowledge in the world that you can apply for other things. You can always be practicing more, but by practicing in a nice educated manner, by practicing in a way that you appreciate what's around you, I think that's already practicing worth its while. I love Mondays.